Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera, where today I'm going to be doing a video on another Yashica rangefinder camera. Yashica seem to be quite popular nowadays. In this case, it's going to be the Yashica Campus, which was released by Yashica way back in 1961. So was that 61 years ago? Quite a long time ago that this camera was released. And the reason I'm doing a video about this camera is for a couple of reasons. First, I want to review the camera, so you people can find out what one of these cameras are and how it works. And second, as kind of an answer to a question which I often receive in the comment section or in messages to my stores, and that is to recommend a good camera for someone who wants to get started in film photography. And my usual response or answer to this question is to use a fully manual camera. And the Yashica Campus is a good example of a fully manual camera. It doesn't use any batteries. There are no light meters or anything like that, no electronic exposure control, no nothing. Pretty much all we have is a system for winding the film, another system for setting the shutter speed, and the third system for setting the aperture. And it's kind of a very simple kind of I guess a simple device and a rather simple process, but which is capable of producing amazing works of art. Cameras nowadays, of course, do pretty much everything by themselves. They set the ISO, the aperture, the shutter, the white balance, and a bunch of other things, zone focusing, and there are so many different things which new cameras can do. And you might think that the best that you really don't have to do anything in order to get a good photograph out of a camera. And that's basically true. You can get good photographs out of a camera just shooting it in automatic mode. But there are some people who don't want just to get the kind of image that the camera decides to take. They want to have some input over the control of the image. Maybe they want to change the depth of field, or maybe they want to they need the subject to be lighter or darker, or they're trying to get a certain kind of look to their image, which you can do with the digital camera, but which oddly is more difficult to do in most digital cameras today, and something which is actually easier to do on a very primitive camera like this Yashica Campus. If you can use a camera like this to kind of get yourself grounded in the fundamentals of photography. And they're basically just a few things. Understanding the film speed, the sensitivity of the film, which translates directly into digital, and the effects of increasing or decreasing shutter speed and aperture and their effects on the image. Once you get that down using a fully manual camera, it really works out well in digital photography or even cinematography. And cinematography is something I've been getting into recently, largely due to my time here on YouTube. I've been thinking of making another video channel about different things. And I've noticed that these people who are using better quality DSLR cameras for doing cinematic work tend to recommend that you operate these cameras in manual mode. And this is for a lot of different reasons, but mainly because it allows, I guess, consistent control, and control over things like, of course, the depth of field, the amount of exposure, and things like that. And for cinematic effect, by increasing or decreasing the frame rates, you can change the effects. And this is something which cameras can't do so easily automatically, but which, like a film camera, you can do manually to get the best possible effect. So anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the description of the camera here. As I said, this camera was released in 1961, and it shares a very similar design to a lot of other cameras at the time. Cameras which come to mind are, say, the Lynx series of cameras, which are kind of like this, but which featured built-in light meters. It resembles a little bit things like the Minister cameras, and the Minister camera and Lynx camera, very similar. And sometimes these things were the same camera, just with different names on them, which were sold in different markets around the world. This is especially interesting with my twin lens reflex cameras, because I list them on my stores and I use the Japanese description, but I have people send me messages saying, no, that's not an A, that's an A2, or that's not this, or it's a that. But where you are in the world, the name can change. Some countries have trademarks on certain names and model numbers, and so Japanese manufacturers couldn't use these on particular things, so they had to rename them. So things which are named for the Japanese market are often renamed for other markets, but Lynx or Minister or Campus, they are basically the same camera with the same basic chassis. And this camera uses the 45mm f2.8 lens, which was introduced on the Yashica 35 in the 1950s. It's a really wonderful designed lens, high quality glass, high quality coatings, and it takes wonderful photographs. And you can always tell which lenses are really good ones because the companies continue to use them for a long time. And this particular lens evolved over 3 or 4 different camera models before it was finally rendered obsolete by a newer and more expensive design. But the lens in this camera is quite capable of taking wonderful photographs with, really good sharpness and contrast, and it does really well with color. Let's go ahead and take a look at the features, controls, and functions of the Yashica Campus. And starting at the top here, we have the rewind knob with a pop-out lever with a nice roller tip. Makes it easier to rewind the film. We have a shoe for mounting your flash gun, and we have a PC sync socket, which is located on the bottom front here next to the Yashica nameplate. Over here we have the shutter release button, which accepts a standard cable release. Here we have the film winding and shutter charging lever, and we have this kind of Leica 2M style winding, or film counter around the outside. This one is kind of exposed where you can see it on the outside of the camera. It's not stuck underneath a plastic window. And this kind of simplified the design of the camera and made it a little bit less expensive to produce, which was a big deal back in 1961. Japan was far from a rich country in those days, and this was considered a very expensive gift for your youngsters going off to college. On the back here we have the viewfinder eyepiece. This camera features a pretty good viewfinder and rangefinder system. It has good contrast, and this system in this camera eventually moved up into the Electro 35 series cameras. On the back here we have this cap here, which you can remove to adjust the horizontal adjustment on the rangefinder. The other adjustment is located here under the shoe. You can pop this out and this will allow you to reach the access screw for the vertical adjustment. We have the strap lugs here on either side. Looks like this camera, it's actually in fairly good shape, but judging by the wear on the strap lugs, someone actually took this and actually used it for a few years. But still, it's in pretty good condition. There's no wear to the chrome. The paint isn't worn off the film door. The leatherette is still in good condition. The shutter still seems to work okay. Overall, pretty nice. On the bottom of the camera, we have a center 1/4-inch tripod socket. We have this kind of unique Yashica system for opening the film door. You lift it upwards toward the front of the camera, then push it down, and that releases the film door like so. It's a really safe system and kind of out of the way, and it cleans up the design of the camera just by tucking it in the corner. On this side here, we have the release button, which you depress to unlock the winding mechanism so you can rewind the film. On the front, we have the focusing system. We have a focusing tab here on the bottom, and we have a focusing scale, which is arranged in both meters and feet. In front of that, we have the depth of field scale, which lets you know how much depth of field you have at any given aperture. In front of that, of course, we have the aperture ring, and in front of that, we have the shutter speed ring. And the Campus, even though it's kind of one of the less expensive of the Yashica cameras, it does feature a full range of speeds on the shutter, from bulb in 1 second all the way up to 1/500th of a second. Some of the other cameras, less expensive cameras of the era, had a more limited set of shutter speeds, using a less expensive shutter to make the camera a little bit less expensive for ordinary consumers. I'll go ahead and open the film door again. We'll take a look at the inside of the camera. Pretty basic in here, very similar to the say Lynx or Minister series of cameras. Loading the film is quite simple. You just push up the fork here to drop in your film cartridge. Drop it down like so. Stretch the film across the back and feed it into the take-up spool. And simply wind and fire until the holes on the film are lined up and being taken up by the take-up sprocket here. And then you simply close the door like so. And this camera is kind of odd in that you have to manually reset the film counter. There's a a start section here. So when you load the film, you set to the start section and you simply wind and fire the shutter until the number 1 shows up in the film counter and the camera is ready to go. So it's a really interesting camera, and this one, the Campus is not an especially common Yashica camera. I don't often see these here. It seems that these didn't sell as well as Yashica intended, and there are more expensive cameras with the built-in light meters and such were more popular versions or more popular models, which is kind of a shame because the more expensive versions of the camera seem to be the less reliable ones. It's really hard for me to find a Lynx or a Minister or these cameras which have good working light meters, and if they are working, that are anywhere close to accurate. And the more, I guess, the more complicated a set of features that these cameras come with, the more likely there is for something to go wrong with them. This camera is very simple, very few things which can go wrong with it, and that just makes it a really wonderful camera. This is, as I said, this is a really good camera for someone who wants to get into photography, to learn the basic mechanics of it without investing a lot of money. A lot of people will go out and buy a new Leica MP with a Summicron lens and spend as much money as a good car would cost, and maybe they'll get into photography, maybe they won't. Sometimes if you spend a lot of money on something that kind of motivates you to do it, depends on how much money you have, I guess. But if you want to learn the basics for a reasonable cost, a camera like this is a really good choice. So anyway, that's it for my video today. I'll be posting this camera for sale shortly on my online stores, or in my online stores, they'll be at my online stores one way or the other. So if you'd like to buy this camera, I should have it listed in a day or two. I've got more cameras which are on the way, which I plan to be listing shortly. The number of cameras I have for sale in my stores is kind of low right now, and that's mainly due to, I guess, good business. I've been selling lots and lots of cameras. It's kind of hard to keep up with demand, but I'm trying as best as I can here. For kind of a busy life here in Japan between ordinary work and the other things I do, and this is kind of something I do on the side. So I'll try to keep more coming and more listed, including this one. If you'd like to buy this camera or another one, I'll have links posted to my stores in the description below the video. I plan to make more videos in the future about more new and different cameras, or I say old and different cameras. If you'd like to see these, please subscribe. I'm always trying to get this channel to get bigger and get out to more people. If you like the video, please click the like button. That helps this happen. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.